Maker's Mark is well known for their wheated bourbon, and they make quite a lot of it, and one of the biggest releases they had recently was the Cellar Aged. Well, that's been going for 2 years now, and Maker's Mark has brought us a new product that is not even a bourbon. It's a wheat whiskey. This is Star Hill Farms, and as you can see, nice and emblazoned, the 2025 version. So this is not a bourbon, it's a wheat whiskey at 51% soft red winter wheat, 27% malted soft red winter wheat, and 22% malted barley. So no corn whatsoever. This is purely wheat and barley. And there has been a ton of rage on the internet about this bottle, many saying that it's better than the Cellar Aged despite being an MSRP of around $100. I recently got mine through a local store through the Bourbon Baller Lee, and I paid $85.99 plus taxes, so roughly about $100, a little bit more than that, after taxes. So I got it for as close to MSRP as I think is possible in Washington State. The question is this as good as everybody's saying? Well, let's get into it and do 2 Minute Tuesday. Cork pop. Ooh, that's a good cork pop. That's a solid cork, too. It's a big, chunky thing. Let's get in our glass and get arrested. Now, some background on the Star Hill Farm. The actual location is where the iconic distillery for Maker's Mark exists, but it is an 1,100-acre farm. And despite the fact that Makers has been using the same mash bill for over 70 years at this point, this is the newest product they've released in that entire period of time using a completely new mash bill. So it's setting a bit of a foundation, shake-up, put it however you want to. Now, there's a big grain-to-glass kind of huge thing going on here. They talk about, if you look at their website, regenerative farming and all these things that are more sustainable and better for the environment. Let's talk about the whiskey and let's just see how good it actually is. The color is really nice here. It's got a pretty dark color to it for a wheat whiskey. Viscosity wise, I don't know how well you can see that, but I've got lots of like little legs coming down here. Let's get to the nose. So the nose is surprisingly soft. There's not a lot of ethanol, even though this is 114.7 proof. It's not super funky, despite being 70% wheat. And I would expect kind of a big funky nose on it. But there is a lot of sugariness, kind of powdered sugar, and a little bit of fruitiness too. There's a little bit of raspberry and strawberry going on. Very like typical red fruit, I know everybody, but like there's a little bit of that perfume that you can get off of wheated bourbons, but in this wheat whiskey, there's a little bit of that. But honestly, it smells really, really nice. So let's get into the palate. Oh, I can see what the hype's about. Big upfront sweetness. It is very much sugary and berry forward. I think like macerated berries, right? Where you've covered up a bunch of sugar, like raspberry and strawberry forward. Man, I'm surprised at how fruity this is. I know like a lot of wheated bourbons will give me great fruit notes, but I guess it wouldn't be Maker's if it wasn't pretty sweet, right? And then as it gets toward the mid palate, you get even more sugar. It's kind of like there's a little graininess going on. So kind of think like that powdered sugar donut kind of thing. And then as it gets toward the finish, you're getting this nice kind of allspice, and I would say specifically that not baking spice. This isn't very cinnamony or nutmeggy. Man, it's got just a nice linger on the way through. It doesn't really have a big Kentucky hug. You're not getting this big ethanol-y punchy thing, but it is like surprisingly strong fruit notes and sugar notes, despite the fact that the nose was kind of gentle. But this is really, really nice, man. But toward the very end, I'm starting to get a little bit of the maltiness from the malted barley, and that's not a bad thing. It kind of just adds a little extra roller coaster ride and complexity to the flavor. There's a little bit of like the barrel spice again with that allspice going on, but I don't get like really big wood sugars out of this. I'm getting definitely the kind of fruity, sweet, a bit interesting. It makes it a bit different. Let's get into overall score. I really like the ride this is taking me on. I'm going to give this an 82. I actually think this is a phenomenal pour. If you can find it at MSRP, I think it is a fantastic find. And this is going to give you something a little bit different and more interesting in your selection, right? It's not like a wheated bourbon, but it's not like a single malt. It's a wheat whiskey, but it's not as funky as some of the other wheat whiskeys I've had. Like as an example, I've got a Woodford wheat whiskey. That thing's super funky and kind of weird. I'm not a big fan of it, but this I really like because there's big fruit notes that it kind of takes you to some of that more grain forward. And don't think like grainy, like youthful craft whiskey, but more just kind of appreciating. And I know this sounds weird, but that grain to glass thing they're doing there, it is bringing a nice kind of grain. And again, it gets that kind of almost powdered sugar donut kind of thing going on. I actually really, really like that. But for those that don't like the malted note, I think that might be one thing that'll throw you off because there is that malted note at the end. But here's a real question. How does this stand up to Cellar Aged? Now, I'm out of Cellar Aged 2023. That's the one that most people tend to like. I actually like the 2024 more because I feel it's just a touch sweeter, and I like that sweetness that comes in it. We've had this. I'm going to have a quick sip and nose of the Cellar Aged 24, and we'll compare just at a quick glance. is it worth chasing this at a lower MSRP than trying to find the current or next Cellar Age when it comes out? Cellar Age. So right away on the nose, there's a bit more punch. The Star Hill farm had a much more like soft and relaxed nose. There's lots of things going on in it. It doesn't have a lot of ethanol, where this has a reasonable amount of ethanol, despite the fact that they're very similar in proof. This also has a bit more of that traditional kind of maker's profile smell to it. There's a bit of caramel, there's a little bit of fruit, there's some spice in it. Overall, I think I have a bias toward fruity whiskey. I like the nose of the Star Hill more. Palate. Man, I do like this whiskey. I won't lie. The fruits are a lot darker. They're not as bright as that kind of raspberry, strawberry macerated thing that's in the Star Hill. This is a much more deep kind of cherry note. Think like Bing cherries or like a cherry syrup, kind of like what you get on your Luxardo cherries, that syrup that it comes in. Think more like that. There's a lot of spice, this kind of dark, rich caramel going on. There's much more oak influence, right? This is like 12 and 13 year whiskey, where this is 7 and 8. There's just so much more complexity, but it's not... How to put this? It's kind of like the same notes most of the way through. It's just a more complex thing that you're slowly enjoying. Instead of like big fruit into a donut into this, like you get in the Star Hill, this is a lot of those things right up front. Then as they carry to the mid palate, even in the finish, the only thing that really comes to the finish is some of that barrel char and spice influence. But you've got this big, deep, dark caramel thing, that darker fruit, and it's going through the whole time, and it's sweet. It's quite sweet. So a lot of people might not like this because it is a bit sweeter. And there's a lot of people who don't like how sweet Maker's Mark is. I personally do, so one more. There is a little more ethanol on this, and there is a bit of the wheat funk. Now that I sit here and really let it kind of evolve on my tongue. One thing I will say is that as far as what lingers longer, the Cellar Age lingers a bit longer on my palate and kind of keeps the mouth watering and kind of reactivating those flavors than the Star Hill does. Honestly, I see why people would select the Star Hill over this. That really big, bright fruit note up front of the Star Hill. Let's, in fact, that big upfront bright fruit note that changes into that kind of like donut-y thing. I think some people might like that a bit more than the type of sweetness you get here, right? While this is got some fruit to it, it's much more caramely, and there's this deeper sugary thing going on where this is the Star Hill is much more like confectionery and not as, I don't want to say refined, but I want to say like cooked. You know, because you think about like caramel is cooked sugar, right? Where like powdered sugar has a very definite thing to like think those like soft, chewy caramels, right? That's the kind of flavor I'm getting out of the Cellar Age. Where this is much more of that like kind of powdered, sugary, macerated berry thing going on. I think it really depends, because if you don't like malty notes at all, the finish on this is going to turn you off immediately, because there is a pretty good malty note in there from that 22% malted barley, and there's no corn sweetness to kind of pull away from that. You're reliant 100% on the wheat. So in that case, if you don't like a malted note, you're probably going to want to look for the Cellar Age if you want kind of a high-end Maker's product to be a part of your collection, your selection, whatever have you. But if you like a malty note, I would honestly suggest finding this instead of the Cellar Age, because not only is this cheaper by about, I think it's $50 or $60 on MSRP. I think most of the time you see these, they're about $200-ish, where this is about $100 typically. Granted, secondary is going to change that some because this is the new hotness and all that kind of nonsense, but I honestly think for the difference in MSRP, if you're okay with that malted note in the finish, the Star Hill's a better product. If you don't like that malted note, then you're going to want to look for the Cellar Age. Or maybe you'll go for one of the older wood finishing series. They all have their own kind of interesting profile to them. My dog barking.
One eternity later.
For me, I don't mind that malty note. And in this case, I really like that upfront, bright, fruity note. It's much more dominant in the palate than the fruit notes that sit in the Cellar Age. And I think in that case, I'd rather have the Star Hill farm. But it's this, right? It's like the 1 point difference. If Star Hill is an 82, the Cellar Age is an 81. That's what we're looking at. I don't know that I would rate Cellar Age quite an 81 because of its price tag, and often you have to find it full on secondary, which sucks, but it's neither here nor there. Purely on flavor, I think this has a very small edge over the Cellar Age, but it's going to depend 100% on your personal palate. That's how it hits my palate. That malty note might be overbearing for you, or maybe the malty note is the selling point. You're a big, maybe like malt, single malt kind of person, and you're looking to kind of expand out of that like Scotch or American single malt. This might actually be a really interesting pathway toward things like wheat whiskeys, like maybe some of the Bernheims, things like that, or wheated bourbons, like this small army I have beside me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, leave a comment down below. Have you tried Star Hill Farms? Have you tried the Cellar Aged? Are you a big Makers fan? You have like every Makers product known to man. Maybe you're like one of my friends, Northwest Bourbon Mark. He is a massive Makers fan. I think he has like every release known to man and like 4 billion picks or something like that. He loves his Makers. Or maybe you've never liked Makers. Being a wheat whiskey, being the newest thing they've done in 70 years, maybe that makes you interested to go try it at a bar and get a feeling of, maybe this is different, maybe I should have it. I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. When we hit 500 subscribers, we're going to give away a number of sample packs of all sorts of really, really awesome whiskey. It might even include Star Hill Farms right here. In fact, I'll guarantee it will. And when we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're going to do more than that. We're going to start by giving away this E.H. Taylor single barrel, and there will probably be a few more, but once we get there, I'll announce all of that. So subscribe, turn on all your notifications so you don't miss a single video. Every Tuesday, we're going to have a 2-Minute Tuesday, and I'm going to try and start putting out a few extra things here and there. Some collabs with some of my other Northwest content creators, and more. So if you've enjoyed this, give it a like, leave a comment, help the YouTube algorithm tell the rest of the world. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.